My name is Brenda Barragan, and I did my research on traditional masculinity and hunting and fishing attitudes. So while state game and fishing departments have had a significant effort trying to reduce the amount of hunting and angling violations, they continue to increase each year. Poaching, littering, property damage, trespassing, hunting, and boating accidents are due to poor judgments that involve various factors that increase poor decision-making. This study looks at traditional masculine aspects regarding unethical hunting and fishing attitudes. There have been no previous studies that have investigated causes or correlations that are committed by men. There have been no identifications of personality, learning, or other variables. So the reason for this study is because there have been no previous studies in psychology that have examined the personality and characteristics of outdoorsmen. And as hunting and fishing violations increases, the amount of licenses that are bought each year continue to decrease. And then traditional masculinity affects fishing and hunting attitudes, but we want to know, how does it? So according to Byrne and Ward, men are expected to be physically strong and masculine, highly competent and knowledgeable, and to solve their own emotional difficulties and avoid showing vulnerability. And according to Levant, these problems from gender role socialization include men's lesser abilities to be empathetic and emotionally expressive, and they have a large amount of anger, rage, and a greater good. Men's tend to endorse traditional masculinity ideology to a greater extent than did women, and that within the United States the effect size of gender was larger than the race and ethnicity, and that was according to Levant, Hall, and Rankin. So our hypothesis was to develop sportsperson attitude scales, which is also known as SAS, to address these questions that were previously explained as to why men are causing these violations. It's also to investigate if masculinity is associated with negative aspects of the SAS, and if fishing and hunting citations correlate positively with higher MRNI-SF scores, and if wildlife taxidermy frequencies correlate positively with higher MNRI-SF scores as well. So the method for this study was conducted with 104 adult outdoorsmen all over the age of 18, and they were all recruited via website, gun shows, and on-campus surveys. The instruments that were used to conduct this study was the Sportsperson Attitude Scale, the Male Role Norms Inventory short version, which is also known as the MNRI-SF, and the procedures include the SAS responses of the SAS compared to the MNRI-SF. And we also looked at the several demographics regarding age, gender, the amount of hunting and fishing citations, how many taxidermy they've done, any mounting, and their overall opinion on masculinity. So the results of the study showed that a positive and significant correlation between aspects of traditional masculinity and negative hunting and fishing ethical considerations and several demographic variables. We also found a significant correlation between the amount of citations and the number of taxidermies killed with both the SAS and MRNI-SF. And we also found a significant negative correlation between age and SAS scores as well. So as you can see from the table, for the descriptive statistics comparing the two, the average age of the men were about 25 to 26 years old. Their education was, on average, a completion of high school plus 1 year of college. The years they hunted and fished were about 16 to 17 years. The amount of hunting and fishing citations were about 1, and the stuffed/mounted kills were about 2. And this just looks at the Pearson product moment correlation matrix for demographics, SAS, and MRNI-SF scores, which you can see on average the significant findings between the correlation of the SAS and MNRI-SF. So the conclusion of it was men showed more aspects of traditional masculinity, and they showed less ethical outdoorsman attitudes. And there was also a high, as the amount of increase of violations amount, their kills showed they had a higher traditional masculine attitude. And it also showed a negative correlation between older and more experience, which showed that they have more ethical attitudes. And the only limitation of the study was the small sample size, and which could affect the feeling of external validity concerns. So for future directions of the study, we are looking at women and how they play a role, since more women are beginning to hunt and fish. We are also looking between NRA members and non-NRA members, and how culture and ethnicity play a role into this study. Any questions? Yeah.
One thing that comes to mind too, the urban rural. I know in a lot of the really rural areas, there's a lot of hunting for food, and sometimes a mindset that that's their right, and that they maybe don't need to buy a license or whatever.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that, especially since it's changing now that we don't have to really hunt or fish for food anymore. Rather, we just go to the store. Any other questions?
When will those sample information collected from those?
They were collected, we began last March at the gun show that was at the Alaris Center last year. We also went to the outdoors home show last year and have continued to gather samples.
Did any of those questions ask about NRA membership?
We did have a question on the demographics stating, are you a member of the NRA or a non-member, or if you just don't hunt or fish.
But you haven't collected any of that?
No, this is just the beginning of it, looking at traditional masculinity, and then they want to compare between men, women, NRA members, non-NRA members. So by the end of this, after they get all their data, they should have about 4 or 5 different studies.
Are you guys trying to get this published anywhere?
Yes, we are, especially since not a lot of people have done it. When we were looking for literature reviews, there was barely anything. It was really hard to find it, so especially since a lot of it were significant findings for such a small sample, I think that's pretty impressive, and I could see it getting published.
Great, your name on it too.
Mm-hmm.